Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I want to talk about the next Battlefield game. I get questions asked about this all the time while I'm streaming. Speaking of which, if you want to watch me stream, I'm now streaming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Facebook. You can check the link in the video description. You don't need an account to drop on by and hang out. Now the question, or rather questions, that I get asked all the time about the next Battlefield game are: one, do I know what the next Battlefield game is? Two, what do I think it's going to be? And three, what do I want it to be? They're all kind of closely related to each other. And I wanted to talk about it a bit because I find certain parts of this question really interesting, trying to delve into the reasons or rationale behind why DICE or EA would decide to make a World War II game, or a modern shooter, or Bad Company 3. People can speculate as to why they would do that, but I think there's some pretty clear markers or indicators as to what direction they're probably going to go. And that kind of answers the first question there is, do I know what the next Battlefield game is? No, I don't. I don't really have a clue as to what it could be. I'm sure DICE isn't going to do anything crazy with it. I have a feeling it's probably World War II modern, or sort of Bad Company 3 Vietnam era stuff. There's a very, very popular leak that a lot of news sites have covered now, but this leak has really come from one or two sources that kind of both know each other, and that's that the next Battlefield game is going to be World War II. They've leaked a whole bunch of information about what it's going to include, the game modes, maps, all that kind of stuff, and it certainly could be real. This guy has leaked information about the previous Battlefield games. However, in his leak videos, he also talked about how he name dropped Level Cap and said that I knew what the game was. And I know I don't know what the game is. So from my perspective, I see, well, he got that bit of information wrong, so is the other information also wrong? I really don't know what to think, but there's been so much coverage about the next game being World War II, and it does make a lot of sense to make the next Battlefield game a World War II title. If you think about it, the leap from Battlefield 1 to Battlefield World War II would not be that difficult. There's even some weapons that would cross over, and they wouldn't have to change up a lot of the basic mechanics in the way that the game works right now. DICE made a similar decision between Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. There was no Battlefield games in between those two titles, and basically they just went from modern military to another modern military game. It reduced the amount of work that they would have to do with reinventing assets and all that kind of stuff. So it made a logical decision at the time to make that small step forward and come out with a whole new game. Now, Battlefield 1 has been very successful despite what the internet might want you to think about the game. It is a hugely successful title. It sold many copies, and it's not a hard stretch for them to look at this from a business perspective and say, you know what, World War II will probably, almost certainly, be more popular than World War I, and since World War I was already successful, let's just go for World War II. We've got it in the bag. It's not a huge leap from World War I. In fact, some of the weapons in the game can literally transition over from World War I to World War II. Battlefield 1 has worked on naval combat mechanics. Those could easily be translated into a World War II game. The aerial combat has many similar plane types in terms of tail gunners and main gunners. The planes will just move a little bit faster, but the destructions and the mechanics of that could be relatively easily translated over. The tanking system will probably be similarly transitioned over. So a lot of the basic mechanics I can see translating over without too much work. However, it's not to say that they wouldn't have to create a massive amount of new assets for this game, but the leap from World War I to World War II is less of a leap from World War I to modern warfare. And I know they could go back to Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 and translate many of those mechanics into the next game, but since they're at World War I now, rather than putting the entire community base through these massive upheavals, if you will, from modern military to classical war, and then back to modern military, it does make a smoother transition going to World War II from many regards. And it would almost certainly be a financially successful game to do so. An easier game to market by comparison with Battlefield 1, I think that there would be just a massive amount of people wanting and willing to buy this game. I mean, personally, I wouldn't be totally put off by a World War II shooter. I would rather it be a modern military shooter, but from a developer standpoint, I completely understand why they might go the World War II route. And really, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the gameplay, the gun mechanics, the balance, all that stuff is really going to make or break the game in my eyes. So thematically, it doesn't matter all that much in terms of what I would prefer. Now, alternatively, the reasons to go back to a modern military shooter are certainly there, and they're very strong. In fact, some of the biggest criticisms of Battlefield 1 are simply because it's a historical shooter in a franchise that really hasn't done historical shooters for a very long time. I mean, technically, Battlefield 1943 is one of the last historical versions of Battlefield, and that came out in 2009, very long time ago. You kind of have the Bad Company 2 Vietnam expansion, but they've built up a huge audience and a huge player base from the Bad Company games, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and they haven't really diverted from modern times or modern weapons. Hardline was a bit of a stretch, and the fan base didn't even respond particularly well to that. Even though it was modern weapons, it wasn't a war theme. So the fan base is definitely very thematically connected, and I think Battlefield 1 did lose a huge percentage of the core player base that enjoyed Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. And since Battlefield 4 released in 2014, there's been a lot of new competitive shooters that have come to the market to sort of steal away that modern military audience. Rainbow Six Siege, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, there's a few other games out there that have really come up and become very popular to sort of provide themselves as an alternative game to play, since Battlefield has not been interested in the modern military market for a while. I mean, Battlefield 4 is still around and still playable, but, you know, people want to play the latest thing, the new game, whatever's hot at the moment, and it's certainly not Battlefield 4 anymore. So, if DICE does another historical shooter, will that modern military audience of Battlefield be gone forever? It's a risky move, in my opinion. I feel like that decision would allow their competitors more and more time to really solidify themselves as some of the top modern military shooters out there, and it'll be harder for Battlefield to come back to modern military. Even if they release another Battlefield game in October, which could happen, October of next year, rather, 2019, that means it would be 5 years between releases of modern military shooters for the Battlefield franchise, which is a very long time, and in 5 years gamers will go off and they'll find a different franchise to play or to sort of call their own. And I'm not saying that gamers don't play a lot of different games, but once a franchise has sort of neglected a core user base for a certain period of time, there's less chance that that core user base is going to come back at the end of the day. Now, for me, I got into the Battlefield franchise back when the beta of Battlefield 1942 launched on PC, and I was having an absolute blast playing that game. I thought it was the future of gaming and so amazing. So I got introduced to the franchise with World War II, and I know how amazing a Battlefield World War II game can be, which is why I wouldn't mind seeing a modern, updated Frostbite engine playing a World War II Battlefield game. That could be absolutely amazing. My concern, of course, is that the modern military shooters for Battlefield have had some of the best gunplay mechanics, especially in recent years, compared to what, in my opinion, are not particularly fun or enjoyable gunplay or grenade play mechanics in Battlefield 1. I worry that many of the developers have sort of lost sight of how to balance or make game modes fun. They tried so many new things with Battlefield 1, and I feel like the majority of them failed or resulted in really unenjoyable gameplay. With the modern military shooters, they already kind of have the blueprint of how to make a semi-decent, successful strategic game there, and they can pull from their experience with those. If they go back to historical with World War II, I feel like they're going to be trying a lot of new things, and in the design department, I feel like that's the riskiest area for DICE. When they try new things, a lot goes wrong, and a lot went wrong with Battlefield 1, and that's my concern, and that's why I'm kind of pushing more for a modern military shooter. One, I like modern military as a theme, but two, I think it's a safer bet for DICE to create a Battlefield game that I'm really going to enjoy at the end of the day. If they pull too many mechanics from Battlefield 1 into a Battlefield World War II game, then I'm going to be pretty disappointed. Anyway, that's sort of my reasoning or my rationale for breaking down what I think the next Battlefield game could be and what I want the next Battlefield game to be and why. I hope you guys found this video interesting. I get this question asked a lot, so hopefully I can just refer people to this video down the road because it's not a simple question. It's got a lot of complexities to it, but I am excited to see the reveal at EA Play coming soon. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing out.